The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it is hump day in a riv. A lot of things going on.
Yeah, did you notice they canceled the vaccine and flu clinic?
Yeah.
Steve and I were talking about it. You know, he brought up a very interesting thing. It's policy now on campus that you can't be here without a vaccine. If you're unvaccinated, you cannot be on property.
Really?
So how do you bring people in to get a vaccine into a property that you can't go on with no vaccine?
That's a very good point. They have to. They should have like a restricted area for the. You know, we have another category. We had the great unwashed, which is the poor people. Now we have the great unvaxxed.
Unvaxxed.
You know, and the irony is that now all these people are beginning to talk about all the misrepresentations of how many people actually died of COVID, how many people were just there, had COVID, but died of another, the number of comorbidities. And the other thing is now, a lot of these scientists are now saying that the people who are unvaccinated are getting Omicron at a lower rate. You're actually, I saw it yesterday. They said that after, I forgot how many days after your booster, they've seen an increase in a spike in the people who got Omicron. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, everything you hear is just total distortions of fact. You can't get any facts, really.
Well,
the only thing they're doing is they've said that they've not. I think one of the major newspapers came out and said there's a total state of confusion in this country because of all this conflicting information.
Well, here's some information about what's going on in Fall River. The week of ending December 23rd, our cases went up to 166 cases a day. 166 a day. The week before that, we were at 115. Mm-hmm. 115. So obviously the numbers are going up.
Yeah.
The school is experiencing 15% of the faculty and staff calling out, and 20% of the students. And Governor Baker is not moving. He says, we will not count remote days towards your 180-day requirement. I want everyone in school 180 days.
Well, I hate to say I agree with Governor Baker on anything, but we found out that the problems with distance learning with children. I mean, I think that, you know, there is a place for distance learning. A lot of people, a lot of adults have gone and completed their college degrees and things in online learning and distance learning because they have other things to do. But when we're talking about socialization of people and children and learning how to get along and being educated, also we look at the suicide rates among young people. I think that it's incumbent, but you know, those stats are deceiving too, because you're looking, even New York with that Hochul, who's a real local Hochul, you know, she's out of control. She's a hysterical nut. But
she suffers from CPH?
Yeah, but she even has admitted that the hospitalizations are beginning to go down.
Yes.
The case numbers are going down, that this thing has run its course, and there's virtually no deaths. You know, all they're talking about is numbers of cases.
Right.
They're not talking about serious illness from this disease, because I think now they can't hide the fact that the Omicron virus is an extremely mild to most people. You got to clarify that and qualify that by saying to most people is fairly innocuous. It's like a cold. Some people virtually have no symptoms, and some people have the symptoms of an extremely mild cold, which is a good thing according to all the doctors, that we're at the endemic stage, that this thing has run its course, and from now on, we're never going to get rid of COVID, just like we never got rid of the common cold. Now we'll have the common COVID cold.
Right. Well, what's interesting is, you talked about the numbers. Fall River has reported 22,727 positive cases. 428 people have died. So look at the numbers there, okay? And they're saying statistically that's 1 out of every 53 Fall River residents who's contracted COVID has died. These numbers go back. Remember, these numbers go back. This is total, COVID totals. So 428 people over a year and change. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming that this is what this number is. They didn't have put a date on it. But they're looking at that. 18% of COVID tests conducted in the past 2 weeks came back positive. Swansea added almost 250 cases this past week, with over 19% of its tests coming back positive. So obviously this is something in our wheelhouse that we're going to be looking at. And as you may have heard, the governor bought 26 million new rapid test kits. And he's focusing those on the K through 12 grade. So he wants to send it to the schools again. We sent 200,000 to the schools, and it was a zoo. Can you imagine sending 26 million to the schools?
They'll only lose about 22 million of them. They'll all get misplaced or something. But while we're talking about this, let's try to do what they don't try to do, is put it in perspective. This is the problem. They're using this to get panic, to keep people restricted, to keep people controlled. In reality, let's look at this, objectively. Nobody is disputing the fact that the Omicron variant is extremely, extremely transmissible. We know that. It is hyper aggressive. We're getting tremendous amounts of cases. We're seeing more infections than any other variant in a shorter space of time. But we're also seeing that most of these things are extremely, extremely mild. And we still know who the target area is. And this is the problem I see on the national discourse, and even on the state discourses. Everybody knows by this point in time with this pandemic who has a serious problem with this disease. It's people with comorbidities. They said 60% of them had more than 6 comorbidities. Most of the people who died had at least 4 comorbidities, and those people were all elderly. They had a few children who had compromised immune systems because they had cancer or things like that, which was always a tragedy. But herein lies the irony. They're masking everybody up. They're telling everybody to get vaccines, yet who did they prioritize for the vaccines? The people who are least likely to die from the vaccine. Yeah. Now there are states that are race-basing the vaccines. So an 18-year-old black man who's healthy can get a shot and be prioritized for hospitalization and care and antibodies before a 65-year-old man with 6 comorbidities. Now, I don't care what the government wants to say about this, and I don't care about this distorted rationale. There's a law against basing anything based on race. And secondly, what you're doing is committing murder. That's my opinion. You're committing murder. If a 65 or a 68-year-old person dies because they're denied antibodies or denied hospitalization, to put in somebody who's young and has virtually no health issues and has a 0.0002% chance of even becoming seriously ill, I'm sorry, but you're guilty of murder.
Remember when they came out with Obamacare and they said the death boards will be forming? Maybe that's what's happening. Maybe we're coming out with a death board.
Maybe they just want to get rid of all the old people.
Maybe. They're expensive. Medicare is getting expensive.
The guy who's putting all these better be reminded how old he is. He might have forgotten. He might have forgotten. He forgets everything. He might have forgotten how old he is.
Yeah. Well, it always is interesting. Fall River is using the Test and Stay program, and they're also doing contact tracing within the school. Here's, again, you're going to love this. You're not going to believe it. You will not believe what they're going to do. They're going to hire 2 nursing assistants to track this and to answer questions. nursing assistants to answer health questions. Karen Long, the nursing supervisor, and Tom Coogan, the human resources
Wait a minute.
director.
What was that last name of that other person?
Yeah, Long.
Oh, it's surprising.
Yeah.
And
Coogan.
I'm having it's like an epiphany.
That's right.
Wow.
So they're saying that the school nurses are answering 140 emails about COVID a day. And that is putting too much stress on the school nurses. They have more work to do. So they want to hire 2 independent contractors as nursing assistants. Nursing assistants, now, mind you, have no training in a lot of what these questions are going to be about.
About 99%.
Exactly. I mean, you want to ask a nursing assistant how to wipe a butt, they do that, okay? You want to ask them how to wash a patient, they know how to do that. You want to ask them how to feed somebody, they know how to do that. That's their job. That's what they do. Yeah. Some of them are med techs. So if they're asking about giving medication, they can do that. But answering scientific questions should not be done by a nursing assistant. Not that I'm downing their job, but I'm just showing Kevin Aguiar put $50,000 on the table for this and said, we'll do what we need to do for them. Okay, I understand that. But shouldn't you have done this with a nurse?
Well,
even an associate degree nurse would be better.
I will look. Let's make this perfectly clear. When CJ is talking about this particular subject, it's not theory; it's theoretical. CJ has a PhD. He has a
Piled high and deep.
He has a doctorate in nursing. He worked as a nurse at a very high level. He was the dean of a nursing school.
Yes, I was.
So let's put this. This is not when everybody starts trying to throw snowballs at this guy. Remember one thing: he's a professional. He's a professional nurse. He understands where their scope of authority lies and what they know. Look, these jobs will be given to somebody who they already got. Well, let's look at who recommended the jobs, a Long and a Coogan. Let's remember what they do. This is a giant employment agency. And who knows? It's not without the realm of possibility, Karnak the Magnificent, and looking into his crystal ball, these jobs may never go away. They may never go away. If the right people get in these jobs, they're not going to go away, because that's what the school department is good at, creating jobs that never go away.
True.
So, look, they're going to start saying, oh, you anti-healthcare, you don't want to. Listen, they're going to disseminate, number one, as you said, they don't have really the medical credentials to disseminate the information. And frankly, it's all BS. Because if you look at this, there's so much contradictory information out there. Which guideline are they going to be telling you? The guideline that they pick? CDC, FDA, AAA,
WHO,
AAA, quadruple A, American Motorcycle Association guidelines. I mean, it's one of the major newspapers in this country had a headline this morning about the absolute chaos about medical opinions on COVID. So we're going to give out information when we've proven that half the information they've given out so far, 75%, 80% of the information has been misinformation. We all know that many of the 800,000 deaths were not COVID related. They have admitted now that Trump's gone and they don't want to try to make them look bad by, even if you went in for a broken leg, they had an individual who had a broken leg and was classified as a COVID patient because he tested positive for COVID. He didn't die of COVID, he had a broken leg. Any hospitalization, virtually, 98% of the hospitalizations were considered COVID admissions, and now all of a sudden they're backtracking because now the Dems have used this enough to get into office, to control the public, to make trillions of dollars in the pharmaceuticals. So now they're going to backtrack because they don't want to admit they were a dismal failure at everything.
Exactly.
They didn't control the virus. Yesterday they had testimony in front of Congress. You had Walensky double masked and Fauci with no mask. That encapsulated the total dysfunctionalness of what the federal government is doing. They're not letting the scientists really do it. They got a bureaucrat like Fauci who hasn't treated a patient in 40 years, and now more things about animal experiments, heinous monkey experiments to go along with the dog experiments. But they got a lifelong bureaucrat sitting in front of a microphone with no mask, and then you got Walensky double masked. Next time it'll be double mask, face shield, space suit. Who knows what's the next one? And the other guy will be semi-naked at the microphone. So what do you do? What do you do? We know if you're over 65, if you're elderly, or if you have a ton of comorbidities, you better get vaccinated.
Right.
You better get vaccinated. It's that simple, because you need that. You know, yeah, there's a vaccination good for everybody? I don't believe so. But the fact is, if you've got, if you've got a problem. You know if you've got comorbidities. You know how old you are, unless you lost your birth certificate and you don't know what year it is. You still think it's 2020. Oh, wait a minute, that's the president. Oh, forget it. But you know, this is not rocket science. This has been around now for 2 years. We all know what it does. We all know what variant is prevalent now. We have, everybody knows where they are. And now we're going to hire more people to give out what kind of information. Is it real information? Is it misinformation? Or do you have all the information on a dot board, and the day they call, you throw a dot at the dot board, and that's what you read.
Right.
So I don't know. This is a travesty. This is a travesty that to me, and it's my personal opinion, highlights how a government gone wild can destroy a society, and that's what they've fundamentally done. They are responsible for killing people, just like the governor of New York was, just like Cuomo, sticking them in a nursing home, not denying care. Today, January 12th, 2022, there are going to be people who are over 65 and have comorbidities that are going to be denied medical coverage, and they're going to defer that medical coverage to somebody who's young and healthy based on nothing more than their race. And that's prohibited by law, by the way. You're not supposed to do anything based on race, color, creed. So this has become a national disgrace, and they're trying to cover it up with their lapdogs, the media.
You know, it would have been easier to handle the way they handled it in Europe. They just said the numbers, they said what was going on, and this is what they did. And in Europe, they locked down their communities. They locked them down, and some of them are still locked down.
Yeah.
And they're surviving. Yeah. Barely, but they're surviving.
Hey, they locked down the entire country of Australia.
Right. I mean,
the continent was
the whole
locked down.
continent's locked down. They won't let two people in to play tennis. Yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely interesting. For those of you who don't know, Paul Hart is the new vice chairman of the school committee.
Well, congratulations to Paul.
Yep. Now, during citizens' input, Colin Dias, who ran unsuccessfully for school committee, said, and we're going to get his quote here, he spoke in favor of making Kevin Aguirre vice chair during the meeting, saying he trusted Aguirre to speak out about quote-unquote shenanigans on the committee and would counteract what he described as Coogan's tendency to act as a kingpin.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah. The residents of this community deserve an open and transparent school committee, which was missing the last 2 years, he said. Kevin Aguirre was the only member to vote against the motion. There was no discussion on the committee about the selection before voting began. Monday's meeting was also the first meeting of the school year for newcomers. I have a problem with that first meeting. Okay? Number one, congratulations, Paul Hart. It was a good choice. But I think that the mayor or somebody polled or had discussions with the other members of the school committee to make sure that they steered this away from Kevin Aguirre and steered it into Paul Hart's venue. The other thing that I have a problem with is Mimi Larrabee. Again, she's corrupt. She turns around and she votes to give her employer a contract for pre-K students, which is illegal. It's an ethics violation, and Kevin Aguirre had to remind her of that.
But she's still going to do it.
And no, they redid the vote and she abstained.
Oh.
She redid the vote and she abstained. Well, there's no change in the vote because it was done. I mean, come on. You had Shelley, you had Bob Bailey. I mean, these people don't understand. You don't give money to these private people because you don't want to run the program yourself, and that's what's happening here. They're turning over their work, and that's not the way it should be done.
But they're not reducing their pay.
That's right. Nobody's reducing anybody's pay.
Nobody's reducing their pay. This is what government does best.
Especially the school department.
We give everybody 17 jobs to do the work of one person, and then we contract it out. So then the seven people that are getting paid have nothing to do.
Right.
So this is what they do best. Spend your money. And the other problem is, as you said, you mean Mayor Transparency?
Yeah.
Did something behind closed doors again, like they do with Malone and everything else. So he's meeting with you. Isn't that the same guy that said, I got no problem with this budget. I just want everybody to come into my office and have a private meeting.
Right.
Because, I'm so transparent, I want to do everything behind closed doors. If you were truly transparent about the budget, you would have walked to the city council, went into the well, and said, let's debate the budget.
Right.
Right here in front of the people of Fall River. Let's do this the right way. Let's let the people of Fall River know who is obstructing the budget, who's not trying to work to come to an agreement. But no, I got no problem. I'm going to heaven. You guys, I don't understand it. All I want to do is talk to everybody behind closed doors.
Maybe.
That means let's make a deal. See, the first rule, when you're dealing in an adversarial situation like they were with a budget, like you do with a contract, is you don't go in by yourself to talk about anything that's got to do with that issue. Mm-hmm. Because then it's your word against. They can say you said anything in that meeting, right. Agreed to anything. That's why when we had contract negotiations, I did not meet privately. We had a bargaining committee, and we had an attorney. And I made sure that there was somebody at a meeting when we were going to discuss contracts, because actually it's the law under 150E for public bargaining. But see, this is the whole problem. They talk out of one side of their mouth, and then the words come out of the other end. So this is the problem. Government is great at talking a good game, just like they are about COVID, just like they are about everything. And now the school committee apparently has, like you said, you're not supposed to predetermine these votes.
That's right.
It's prohibited.
But the mayor wants to have these votes.
Well, that's the way he does business.
Right. He has to have it that way because otherwise he doesn't have control. He's a kingpin, as Colin Dias said. And I mean, I can't agree with him more.
I got to give him some credit. That's a pretty good characterization, I think. That's it, kingpin.
Yeah.
Kingpin with strings attached, though.
Puppeteer. This is just a real quick thing. Star didn't get its permit again for their new drug and alcohol detox center in Fall River. You remember the one where the only way they could get the building was to say there'll be no inpatient detox?
That's right.
They filed to have inpatient detox again. And
like we knew that wasn't coming.
Like we knew it wasn't coming. And Glenn Hathaway said no. So they still have a lawsuit pending against the Zoning Board of Appeals, which goes back to 2018, which still hasn't been decided. And they didn't get their injunction. And now we're doing this again.
I just wonder if they ever won that suit.
No,
all those people that they release, are they all going to go to market rate housing?
I guess, I
guess they could, because that's why we need so many developers in here, because this is what we're inviting into Fall River. Let's get more detox and drugs. I don't see Newton making a big push to expand the beds. Oh, wait a minute, they have no beds to expand.
That's right.
That's true. All these rich places, it's like wind power. You don't see windmills in Newton. You don't see drug rehabs in Newton. You see lottery stations. Everybody gets a cut of the lottery, even if they don't play the lottery, because they got $165,000, annual household income. They don't play the lottery, but they get a disproportionate amount. All the poor people play the lottery, hoping that's the only way they could ever have a bank account. But they get a disproportionate piece of the lottery. They make sure it's shared among the 351 cities and towns in the Commonwealth, all get a piece of the lottery.
That's right.
But they don't get a piece of the drug rehabs. Who gets the drug rehabs? Fall River.
And who gets the bigger amount of the pie of the lottery?
Most of the smaller communities proportionately, too.
But they're also the richer communities.
The richer, yeah, exactly. The richer communities are the smaller ones, but even Cambridge, which is a larger city, it's our size, even larger than Fall River, actually. Cambridge gets a bigger cut.
Right.
They all get, look, the game is rigged. The lottery money, and it's rigged. It's rigged in favor, well, who created the lottery? The legislature. Who controls the legislature? Have you ever seen a Speaker of the House in Boston from South Coast?
No.
Never. The closest we ever came was Bob Correa being the majority whip for Kavarian. Mm-hmm. That's the closest we've ever come.
And Mike Rodrigues is the chairman of the Ways
Mike Rodrigues at some point in time may ascend to that because
chairman of Ways.
He's been in Boston so long that I think that's where he's got his actual residence because he's been up there forever. He can't. But this is the way it is. These people, they take care of their constituencies, their friends, their developers, their contributors. Game is rigged. It's always been rigged until you go to the polls and bounce them out on a regular basis.
That's it. That's what we say that all the time.
That's right.
Well, for the last couple of minutes, I want to speak about the fact that the mayor's losing yet another member of his administrative team. It was announced that Madeline Coelho, the Human Resources Director, will be leaving her position as Human Resources Director, I believe on the 26th of January. Close enough.
Yes, no, it's exactly the 26th.
It's exactly the 26th. And I don't know who they're going to put in that position, but I'm sure Paul has somebody he wants to put in there.
Well, I don't know. I got to say something about that because I've worked with Madeline for a long time. I guess she's worked for the city for about 14 years. Before that, she worked at Quaker in HR. She's done a good job. She's understaffed. That HR department is understaffed. Has been for a while. Because people think they only take care of health care. They take care of all the personnel issues, collective bargaining problems, all kinds of things. Grossly understaffed. But see, those people don't make a lot of money, so they're not rushing to put their friends in there. They're overworked and underpaid in that department. And I know that we differ a lot on certain things. I don't believe we need a ton more of administrators because we have department heads making six figures to run those departments. What you need is someone to coordinate those. In the old days, we didn't have all these city administrators and CFOs, and it worked fine. But they're not held accountable, as you just said. We're going to hire more people to do that than we contracted out. But Madeline's done a yeoman's job. I worked with her a long time, and I hope she has a good retirement. And I know she had to move on, and she did a good job for the city. It should be recognized by this community.
Well, and I mean, I know you've done a lot of work with her, and on various issues, not only healthcare, but many issues. And you and I have had conversations on how both of you have disagreed on things. And you weren't disagreeable. That's the key.
That's right, yeah.
Okay? You stated your positions, and that was it. And she stated her position, and that was it. And people are fine, and you agree to disagree, and you move on from there. Granted, you didn't agree with some of the positions because they weren't necessarily her position. A lot of times they were the administration's position. Yeah. And she just had to be the voice of the administration.
No, you're right. I will say one quick thing before you can wrap it up. She truly cared about the employees. She did, because she was one of them.
Which is nice. Well, I want to thank you for allowing us into your home today. And remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on Friday.